I'd like to now invite Mr. Ron Nichsolson and Dale Luck to the stage to talk about early development of the Amiga. Come on up, Mr. Ron Nichsolson. I see you there. Dale's getting mic'd up. Ron Nichsolson, everyone. Come on up, Dale.
All right, it's great to see a crowd like this.
It's amazing, right?
It's, absolutely amazing. See so many people here.
Well, welcome, guys. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here. The folks have heard enough from me. They really want to hear from you guys. We're so lucky that you guys made the trip all the way out from the States. Thank you so much. So why don't we start with Ron. I know you have a very unique Amiga story. Your name is inscribed in the case of the Amiga 1000 and also the Mac. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Actually, I was the one who told Jay Miner that Steve Jobs asked us to sign a piece of paper that might show up at the inside of the case of the Mac. And when I told Jay Miner, he says, well, we can't let only Apple do that. We're going to do that as well.
Good, Jay. All right, Jay. That's right.
So the story about how I met Jay is actually, Steve Jobs doesn't like mediocrity. He only appreciates really good engineering. And when I needed to find an engineer who could teach me something about ASIC design, he gave me a business card and said, this is the best ASIC designer I have ever met and know of, and that was Jay Miner. And that's how I got introduced to him by Steve Jobs. He was that good. He founded several companies in Silicon Valley, and he really taught myself and Joe DeCure a lot about chip design and chip architecture. So that's the story I have about Jay Miner. And he was just a wonderful mentor. It was the three of us, Joe DeCure, Jay Miner, and myself, who sat in a room with whiteboards and drew crazy ideas on the board. Some of those crazy ideas are mine. If you like the way the Amiga 1000 architecture worked, you can applaud me.
Woo! I think they like it.
If there are any mistakes or omissions, for instance, if you're a software developer, the omission of memory protection, you can also blame that on me and boo.
Well, the lack of memory protection also gives us the guru meditation, which we all have on our heart very fondly.
So anyway, I'm going to echo the statements of many of the other speakers up here who are involved with the Amiga, in that we are absolutely astounded. I've worked for several different companies in Silicon Valley, designing lots of products. Many of those products never were finished. Some of the ones that were finished were canceled before they went to production. A few went to production, but no one ever bought them. So the fact that not only did the Amiga make it out the door, but 40 years later, there are people still developing new hardware and software in the ecosystem, still writing new games, still having a user community who loves playing with it, is just absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm going to give you an applaud for being part of that community.
That's a great point. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all the Amiga fans, right?
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yes. So I see something up here on the screen. My first question for Mr. Dale Luck is, how the heck did you get this through security, Dale?
I had nothing to declare.
Yeah.
It was just in my suitcase, and everyone has stuff like this that they fly with, don't they? So I mirror what Ron said about it's amazing to see as many people who are still, following the Amiga, doing new stuff with the Amiga computer. And 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, actually, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we started working on this. And all we had was documentation on what the hardware was going to do. There was no hardware, and we were supposed to start writing software for it. And so, so none of this existed. We just had the documentation that that Rob Peck had created for most of us to work on. And we had the promise, though, that by around December 10th, we would have this assembled together and working, and we had to be at the Consumer Electronics Show about 1 month later with working software and demos and audio and graphics and the Carl's exec. And so there was no Christmas for any of us that year. We spent, I think, a full 2 weeks sleeping at Amiga just before the show. And it was a crazy time.
I can't even imagine. I mean, when I look at this, I'm just a layperson. I'm not an engineer like you guys. Like, what exactly is like going on here? How do you build a computer from scratch? Like you said, you had to make software for it, but the computer didn't even exist. So how do you make software for something that doesn't even exist yet?
Well, we knew what processor was going to be, the 68000, which is this chip right here. And when I started this, like I said, there was no hardware. They were working on building these wire wrapping these breadboards. And it wasn't until, I think, about September or October that I got my first piece of hardware to use that you built.
Yeah, this board I actually hand built more than half of it. A lot of the other boards were built by Dave Needle and several consultants that he hired, and they did a really good job of finishing that up from the block diagrams that Jay Miner and I had drawn up on the whiteboard.
And the way these worked is that you see these umbilical cords, these ribbon cables, they would plug into the sockets on this board. And so each one of these, this is the address generator. No, let's see. This is the address Agnes. And this is Paul or Portia. No, that's Daphne. That's the address generator. That's the blitter chip. This is Daphne, and this is Portia. And they all, together, they made this thing do its amazing graphics and audio operations. Each one of these had its own power supply. And like you see the power supplies there. For testing them, they had these custom-made test boxes with switches and stuff that you could set registers in them. This is getting more technical, I guess. But what else can I say?
If you count the number of wires on that thing, it is absolutely astounding that we actually got that to work. So the first time we fired it up and it actually worked, I went, what? We don't have to spend 3 weeks debugging it? Because it actually came up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it did. In fact, I mean, there are some stories about how did this ever work. When we did get to the Consumer Electronics Show, we got the line drawing working before then. And but when we came back, we plugged it in and something stopped working. And my tests weren't working exactly right. And so Dave Needle looked at it and he said, oh, there's a missing wire here. And it's not working because of that. And it could never work with this missing wire. The wire was never installed. We, to this day, do not know how this system worked with that one wire completely missing from the wire wrap stack. Another story is prior to the show, we had moved it around and something broke. And I was running my test programs on it, and a particular display was blinking at me. And Dave Needle came over and he figured out what the problem was. For the bus transceiver chips had broken, or probably because of static electricity. And so we replaced those, and great, it was working again. We took it to the Consumer Electronics Show. First time we plugged it in, I saw the same exact problem appear on the screen. And I says, I know what's wrong with this. I saw this like a week ago. And Dave Needle came in and told them that he would work on it. And so he magically fixed it in like 5 minutes. And we had a working Consumer Electronics Show demo ready to go.
It's an Amiga miracle. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, it was all in a hidden booth because we were trying to show it off in secret. And I remember, people wanting to see it, but we said, unless you sign an NDA, they're not getting in there. So it was the special secret of the show.
I saw at the exhibit at the Amiga 40 in California, you guys did an amazing job recreating the 1984 CES booth, and I saw you guys had the Joy board out there and different Amiga products, and then you had a secret curtain that people could go behind and see what you were working on, the prototype.
Right, and in that room we had some of the original hardware from 1984, like the Sony monitor that was part of the show in 1984. I still had, and so we had it on display. I had it rejuvenated, kind of. You heard of the story of the Boing ball?
Yes. Please tell it.
So Sam Dicker originally wrote this fantastic demo, which is this big spinning ball, which we don't have it anymore. We're going to try to recreate it sometime. And it was a ball that was fully the size of the screen, and it spun using color map animation. And me knowing how the play fields worked and the color palette worked, and also being a physics guy back in high school and college, I thought I would like to make that guy bounce. And so I shrunk the ball. So during the course of a week or so before the Consumer Electronics Show, I started actually working on that. And I got a chance to continue working on it on the night before the last day of the show. And RJ and I, he had another demo he was working on, and we snuck into the show with a 6-pack of beer, and we continued to work on our own demos, and I finally got the bouncing ball working about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and said, okay, I'm done for tonight. And the next morning, when the Amiga execs came back in, they saw the bouncing ball, because we were sleeping on the floor in the room, and they probably wondered what we were doing there, sleeping on the floor there. And then they saw the little bouncing ball on the little Sony monitor, and then they said, well, now we have to go back and get everybody that we've already showed everything to and bring them back in, because we want to show them this new demo. So that was pretty amazing back then.
That's amazing that you guys just slept there and worked on it overnight. To me, that shows the amount of passion and dedication and care that you had for this machine. Ron, we were talking about the Amiga community and how we're still here 40 years later talking about the Amiga. There's something magical about the Amiga. And I don't know, and I think it comes from you guys. Can you tell us, what it was like working at Amiga back then, and you guys kind of put your heart and souls into this machine. Tell us why you think that translates to what you see here today.
Well, I'd actually have to say a lot of it is we made some really lucky guesses, and the lucky guesses turned out surprisingly really well. I have an interesting story to tell about strange phenomena that happened. Just when the Amiga was introduced, Jay Miner gave me an early Amiga prototype. I didn't have a good monitor to show it off, so at that time I was working at HP Labs. I brought it into HP Labs, set it up on the bench, and it was playing some of the prototype games on it. And these two engineers come up and say, what are you doing? I say, look at this, this is a graphics chip that, just came out. Look at all the cool games and stuff it could do. And these engineers look at it and go, wow, that is something that really, is really cool. And I find out a few weeks later they've left HP. Now, I'm famous for 3 things that I've worked on: the Mac, the Amiga, and I did a little bit of work on the Nintendo 64 at SGI. But guess what happened when I went and started working at SGI, and I found out who was the CEO and director of engineering? Those 2 engineers that I had demoed the Amiga to a decade back and left to do something else. What else did they do? The graphics workstations at SGI. So things that influence the future that you would never think of turned out to be quite interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of you guys went on to create other incredible projects after Amiga that have also changed the world.
Well, I could add something to that.
Yeah.
Back then, we honestly, I think all of us felt we were on a mission from God, is what we were on. You talked about lucky guesses. I think one of the lucky guesses that we had was hiring an incredible group of talented and passionate people who had their own visions. Carl had his vision about the kernel and preemptive multitasking.
And they're still using that kernel now.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been working at Hewlett-Packard for 4 years on graphics, and so I had a vision of what we could do with graphics, and Sam Dicker had a vision of what he could do with audio, and so there was this, and RJ had his vision about blitter objects and what animation we could do, and eventually bringing out the intuition. So I think it was really, it's the people. It's the people that were that injected spirit and soul into the machine.
You can really feel that today, and that's why we're all here together right now. And like I said before, like, you guys made something that has changed so many of our lives. Like, so many of us went into the career that we have now thanks to the machine that you guys created. So it's very, very, very magical.
Yeah, one of the tenets that I remember we had was we didn't want to let our own possible limited creativity, our own limited thinking and creativity, to limit other people's creativity and what they could do to the machine. So we kept it as open as possible and tried to allow people to do fantastic things like what they're doing now, living within the rudimentary rules that we had in there so that things could play together and not necessarily have to take over the machine. Although there are times when, yes, you really need to get right down to the hardware and take over the machine. But more or less, everything works together still.
And there was a lot of teamwork. For instance, I was responsible for the original memory map, but the software engineers came to me and said, no, we need to fix it if we can make it better. So the integration between the software and hardware, I think, is one of the key things that optimized this architecture.
I think we were not just necessarily software or hardware, but we're more system engineers. And we could look at a problem and say, well, I could piece this part and get this done more efficiently in hardware, or maybe the hardware isn't the right place to do something. A little piece of trick software will make the hardware a lot easier to do and implement. In particular, one of my stories is the line draw. When the blitter was created, there was no hardware line draw. There was a fill mode, which I kind of looked at, and I'd done area fill, polygonal area fill at Hewlett-Packard, and I wasn't sure exactly how to make that work or how to use it effectively. But then, since I had no hardware when we started, I wrote a blitter emulator in software, and so that I could write a program to drive the virtual hardware. And as I wrote the program that was state accurate to how the blitter worked, I realized that changing about 3 lines of my software would cause the blitter emulator to draw lines instead of just doing basic rectangular blitz. And the realization of that came around in November, early part of November, and I wanted them to change the hardware to do that, and said, because software line draw is pretty slow. So I put on my hat that says, we need to do this, and everyone was pretty much saying it's too late. The hardware is done, the schematics are done.
That was me. He had to twist my arm. Fortunately, he succeeded.
Well, so it was either you or somebody said, okay, Jay, take Dale out to lunch and give him the bad news that we're not going to be able to do it. So sometime in November, Jay took me to Denny's, which is a
like a diner. It's like, yeah,
right,
like
a little bit more than
yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I brought my program listing, and Jay was there wanting to convince me, no, we're not going to do hardware line draw. We can't do it. I brought out my listing, said, Jay, we just need to do these 3 changes. And then we came back, and Jay said, I think we should do hardware line draw.
don't take no for an answer. Just when you
Yeah.
believe in something in your heart, you just got to go for it, right?
Well, when you got a good idea.
Yeah, when you have the good idea.
Champion it.
When you believe in the idea, you go with it. Now, we're talking about the bowling ball. I never realized that bowling ball had different iterations. How at first it didn't spin, it didn't move. But one of the most iconic parts of the bowling ball is the sound, that bong sound. Can you tell us a little bit about the bowling sound, guys?
Okay, so that's another story. So after the Consumer Electronics Show, we came back. We wanted to make it better. One of the things I was really missing was a sound when it bounced, and there was a lot of different sounds that were tested that Sam was creating that were more like arcade sounds, and they sounded like boink 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 and ding ding, and none of those seemed to work for me. So Sam used his Apple II with a digitizer, and we started hitting things in the office and to see if that would be the right sound. And eventually, we had these, Bob Pariseau took one of these foam bats that we had used for settling arguments at work, and went outside and behind a big roll-up garage door, steel garage door, and he banged on it. He banged on the garage door, and I thought, boom, that sounds like the right sound. So Sam digitized that, and then that's where the bouncing ball sound came from.
Amazing. Oh, that's just amazing. I love all these stories. Ron, do you have any, unfortunately, the time is so tight with these talks, but do you have any favorite memories working at Amiga? Anything that really means something to you internally? Anything you'd like to share with the audience that you think they'd like to hear?
Well, Dale already said it was an excellent team of engineers, system engineers, software, hardware, documentation, the people, the technicians doing the wire wrapping. It just all came together. Again, given the number of wires there and stuff like that, it's pretty much an amazing effort that we accomplished this, and we couldn't have done that without the great team of people that Jay and Bob Pariseau and Dave Morse put together.
Yeah, completely agree. It was a team. It was like a family.
Unfortunately, there's only 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask the guys?
So the prototype, there are stories that you also used this computer from Sage Computer Technology for getting to port the Tripos operating system. Was that just in the early days, or that to get the operating system up and running, that there was also computer used, third-party computer from Sage Computer Technology?
Right. The Sage was used. It was running a Unix, Idris Unix-like operating system, and Tripos was not part of the concept at that time. Tripos didn't come around till after Commodore bought Amiga. But we were basically Carl was working on there was no disk floppy system or file system that was being worked on at the time. But no, the Sage was just used for cross development and doing 68K development, and then we downloaded code into the prototype and then ran it there. No Tripos at that time.
Question. You want to talk? Yeah.
You're talking about the great experience with the team, and they're working good together. You're talking about the Germania team. What happens with the Commodore team? Is this a mixed team at this time?
Yeah, this was all done originally from a shelf company called High Toro, which is the original, I think, 15 or so people that got renamed Amiga, and it wasn't until well after this was working and the chips were working that Atari and Commodore all entered in sort of a bidding war for the company, and I guess Commodore won.
How did you guys feel about the transition, from Amiga to Commodore, West Coast going to the East Coast?
Well, this badge is actually wrong. It says I worked for Commodore. They gave it to me. I actually left before the Commodore purchase, so Dell will have to answer that.
Well, there's several parts to that. When Commodore first, when we first merged with Commodore, which was about between August and October of 1984, there were mixed emotions that we weren't able to complete the Amiga on our own, but we were also happy that we would continue to get paychecks, and all the work that we had been doing would not be lost, and in particular, it would not get disassembled at Atari and just pieces pulled out for whatever they were going to do. Commodore was committed to actually let's bring out this computer. Commodore needed something after the C64, and so I feel that what they were thinking is that they were rescuing Amiga, but at that time Commodore wasn't doing that well either. There was the bottom was falling out of the personal computer market, and I actually had a T-shirt I was wearing that was the Commodore Rescue Team was my T-shirt, or my take on it. So I think it was. I think both camps, Commodore and Amiga, knew that there was something that was synergistic, that we could work on this together, and Commodore allowed us to go from the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive to a 3 1/2 inch, go from a HLS color palette to an RGB color palette. So they also allowed us to each get our own 2 computer instead of 4 guys sharing a Sage. And so yeah, Commodore, there would be no Amiga, especially as you have it now, without Commodore entering the picture.
It worked out to be a great partnership.
But I have to say that when I heard that Commodore had purchased the Amiga and brought it out, it was mixed emotions, because Commodore essentially funded them so they could finish the product and bring it to market. But I did not have a good impression of how well Commodore was, how well they ran the company, and that turned out to be the major issue. But even though Commodore essentially destroyed the project, guess who kept it alive? You guys.
Yes, absolutely.
There's something I like to say. I say Commodore failed, but Amiga survived. Amiga definitely didn't fail. Do you have one more question? Then we have to move on to our next guest. Yeah.
So it's amazing how you guys could manage a team of clever software and hardware engineers. Today they try to reinvent project management methodology like Agile, Scrum. Can you explain a bit how this team was managed? Was there actually a project manager? And did you use kind of an agile way of developing hardware and software at the time? Or did your team manage yourself?
You think this team was managed?
Yeah, no, there was a little bit of guidance, and then we were told that basically we hired you for what you knew and what you wanted to do and your passion, and so go do it. And these are the people you'll work with, and everyone had the same philosophy. All the hardware people I worked with and the other software people I worked with, they're all wonderful, talented, and caring individuals, and so we all came together.
The team, it was just the synergy of the team. We made it work. Dale stated it very well.
Amazing. Thank you guys so very much. We appreciate your time. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you to all of you.
If you guys have more questions for Dale and Ron, you can see the breadboards back there by the black curtain. They'll be happy to answer any questions.
Oh yeah, these breadboards I brought from California, they're all in the table back there. And if you see me, hopefully I've answered most of those questions now about what they are. And so, I'll see you soon.